For our last topic this week, we'll talk about communication competence. This is from Carrillo's Chapter 3, Intercultural Communication Competence, aka the chapter that focuses all on this concept. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking through this and give you a couple examples. Competent communication is usually judged to be effective and appropriate. Let's delve a little bit into what the difference between those two things are. Effective communication is accomplishing your goal. If you want to get to a big idea, here you are, you have accomplished it, according to this infographic. I guess it's just a graphic. And appropriate communication are expected and accepted ways of accomplishing your goal. And you might notice the word appropriate used a lot in society. This means it's a cultural judgment. If you see this screen before a movie, then you know that your trailer, your preview, has been approved for whatever audience is deemed appropriate. So if you're watching an R-rated movie, this is likely rated for an R-rated audience, but since you're already in the movie, you're an appropriate audience. But these are just definitions. Let's take a look at some of the levels of competence next. There are 4 different levels that we consider, and these are based on whether you know you're competent or not, and whether you're competent as in effective and appropriate, or if you're not competent as in ineffective and inappropriate. So the very lowest level of competence is unconsciously incompetent. You don't know that you are not being effective and you are not being appropriate in a given situation. The next level up is consciously incompetent. You do know that you're not being effective and you're not being appropriate. And so you might ask for help on how to be more effective or be more appropriate in a given conversation. Our next level up is consciously competent. So you do know how to be effective and appropriate, and you have to think about it as you're doing it. You can reflect and say, I am saying all the things that I need to say in order to be competent here. And the highest level, although your book does say that this comes under some scrutiny, is unconsciously competent. You go through your day, you don't even realize it, but you are being effective and appropriate, and you don't need to focus a lot of mental energy on how to do that. Let's look at an example of where these levels might come into play. Let's say you're in a grocery store here in Boulder, Colorado. I picked Whole Foods as this picture. And you are checking out your food from the grocery store, and at the very end or somewhere near the beginning, your cashier asks you, do you want a bag? You plan on just carrying your groceries because you only got 3 items and that's enough that you can carry. So you decide that you don't need a bag. If I were in this situation, I would say, no, thanks, or no, thank you, I have one, or I'm just going to carry these. In this situation, I don't get a bag then. I said no thanks. I said, no, I've got it. And she doesn't give me one. So I was A, effective. I accomplished my goal. I did not get a bag. I'm just carrying these things out. And B, I was appropriate. Any of these responses that I gave would be accepted and expected. I've lived in a couple different countries, so let's talk about another one. This is, I think, Lidl or Aldi. Both stores are related to each other, and they are German. So when I spent time abroad in Germany, I faced this same exact situation. They charge you for your bags, just like they do here in Boulder now. So it was 10 cents a bag, and I didn't really want one. Every time I went, I walked 2 blocks to get there and could easily walk 2 blocks back. especially if I was only getting 3 items. So in the same situation, I don't want a bag, and when the cashier asks, I would just say nein, danke. Although often if you want a bag, it is your responsibility to grab one, so then you would just not take one. I learned these rules from living there for a few months and watching the people in front of me go through this. And the first time that I went through, I was nervous and I didn't really know what I was going to do. But since I speak and understand German, I learned the rules and I came to be consciously competent. I know that if I want a bag, I grab one. And if I don't want a bag, I don't grab one. And if the cashier asks, I know what to say. I have to think about it a little bit. It's not as unconscious or easy for me to just spout out in German "Nein, danke" when somebody asks me about this. So I would classify this as conscious competence. Let's try one more country. Last summer, I spent the whole summer in Norway, and this is my first night there and my first time buying groceries in this country, and I expected that I would get asked about the bag since they didn't have them out like they do in the German places that I went. So this is Coop in Norway. So on this first night and many subsequent days, the clerk would ask me something that sounded like absolute gibberish. Prusa. I had no idea what they said or what that word even was or how to spell it or anything. So I just stared at the cashier trying to intuit what this question could be. After a while, I just asked, "English?" And the cashier said, "Oh, yes. Do you want a bag?" And I said, "No, thanks." Was I effective? Yeah. I didn't get a bag. I didn't want a bag. I had one in my purse. I just forgot about it. But was I appropriate? No. I'm in the high north of Norway, so I was up above the Arctic Circle for the whole summer. They don't see many English speakers there, and certainly not at the tiny little coop that was near where I was living. So it was expected that I would answer "nei" or "nei takk," which is Norwegian for no or no thank you. But my English answer is "accepted." She did eventually come to understand that. This is, of course, not actually her. So in Norway, I know that I am incompetent. I know that I don't speak the language, and I know what I'm trying to communicate, but I just kind of clumsily get through the conversation by asking, "What do you mean? What am I supposed to say now?" So that's communication competence, effective and appropriate communication across 3 different countries with 3 different competence levels.